It's 4 o'clock on a Monday, and you know what that means, don't you? It's time for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. This week, starring special guest star, Miss Erin Jacobson. Woohoo! Music attorney Erin Jacobson. Music lawyer. The music lawyer.
The music industry lawyer.
Music industry lawyer. You know, and I practiced over the weekend.
No, that's okay.
I really did. Hi, Erin.
Hi, how are you?
Somebody just, made it here a little close.
I'm on time. There was traffic. This is what happens
It's
in
Los
LA.
Angeles.
Yeah.
Yes, there's always traffic. Anyway, welcome to the big show today.
Thank you.
We're extremely fortunate to have this capable music attorney with us to answer your legal questions, music industry legal questions for 2020. Erin has become an extremely popular speaker at the Taxi Road Rally. People come up to me after the rally. I took Erin's class. It was amazing.
Oh, yay.
Good job.
Thank you.
By the way, the Road Rally, I'm starting to, hold the date early. November 5th through the 8th of this year. So mark your calendars now.
I'll write that down.
She's like an A student. She does everything
November
right.
5th through the 8th.
That's
okay.
right. Here in beautiful Los Angeles.
Be there.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, but then again, I'm a little jaded. So my lawyer tells me to say, opinions expressed during this broadcast, the archive video, or in any edited segments of this episode of Taxi TV do not constitute legal advice, mind you. They are for your general edification and entertainment purposes only. If you have legal matters, you should seek the advice of a qualified music or entertainment attorney. I happen to know one who several Taxi members have been very happy with. By listening to today's questions and answers, you're bound to hear an opinion or two about a question that you may have as well. So buckle in, grab your notepads, prepare to learn some cool new stuff about the legal issues in the music industry for 2020. And also, I want to mention, I always forget the name. You have some, and you're not going to like this terminology, like prefab contracts, right? Templates.
Yes.
Okay, fill in the blank templates, because you found that over and over people were asking the same questions or had a need for the same kind of contract.
Right. Well, what I was finding was that a lot of independent musicians that were maybe just starting out or still trying to get traction in their career, they couldn't afford a lawyer. And they couldn't afford, custom drafted contracts. And I thought, okay, how do I help these people? And so I thought, okay, what are the most common contracts that they need?
What are some of them? Like
work for hires, band agreements, songwriter split agreements, management agreements, producer agreements. There's more. We have there's one for, I think I have one for a recording studio. I have one for master ownership, video ownership. So I have different ones, which is basically like, okay, you're getting started, you're collaborating with people.
Gee, I wish you had some for some of the stuff I need.
Yeah. You need custom things.
Yeah, isn't that funny how that works?
But it's more complicated. But anyway, so I thought, okay, how can I help these people? What can be a solution for them? So I thought, okay, I will draft agreements that are based on the agreements that I draft for my clients, but there's blanks in them, and it's a template. So it's not going to fit every single little nuance, but for the most part, it's going to fit the general scenarios of what you would need those agreements for, and I know that they're drafted correctly because I drafted them. So, well, believe me, there's a lot of templates out there on the internet that are bad, and some of them people are charging for, and some are free, but they're not good.
Free is never good.
No, it's not good, but even some of the ones that are paid are not good.
That's because the music attorney in Chillicothe, Ohio, actually went to real estate law school.
Maybe, yeah.
But loves music.
Maybe.
So here's what I'm thinking. Don't tell them where they can find those just yet. At the end of the show...
Stay tuned.
That's right.
Yes.
At the end of the show, I'm going to ask people to go into the comments section below the video in YouTube and list off the types of contract templates that you'd be interested in seeing. And then once we've got that list going on, then we will give you the URL to go check them out. Okay. All right. We want
You're making people work for it.
That's right, damn it. Nobody gets a free ride around this show. Ever. Anyway, so let's say a quick hello to our friends in the chat room.
Hi, friends in the chat.
There they are.
Who's in the chat?
We have Marion Laird, who won a book last week. The Justine Jones, Tom Hoy, Dan Weber, Mojo Bone, Quattro Studios, Robbie Hancock, Peter Rahill, Edmund Red. Hello, Edmund. Again, back. Not that you're never not here, but you know. Russell Landwehr. Wow. How are you, Russ? Josh Falcon, J Ring Music, Randy House Music, Floyd Armlin, No Sellout, piece of the panel and chat. All right. So hello everybody in the chat, and we're going to jump right in and start answering some questions.
Can I say, Michael, like the viewers have leveled it up this time.
Yeah.
The
question. Yeah. As a matter of fact,
they were sending in.
Their questions were so good that I moved their stuff up to the top of the list.
Okay. Yeah, you guys sent in really good questions this time. You guys are leveling up, so that's awesome. I'm super excited to see everybody moving forward in their careers.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with this one from Debbie Ward, all right?
Go for it.
Hi. Do you have any insight on the Discovery Network and their various channels and shows with their plan to cut royalties to composers? And does that include songs signed from indie artists for use in their various productions, of which I have several with an agreement that royalties to come on the back end and to be paid to my PRO? Thank you. Thank you, Debbie.
Can I move this? Or is it going to mess up your whole audio setup here?
A little, but that's okay.
Okay.
There you go.
So my understanding with Discovery is that it's sort of across the board. They've just said, we're not paying for any of this anymore. And you're not getting back-end royalties. And you're going to sign away your rights for any future back-end royalties.
So basically they want to do buyouts, but, direct licensing.
Yeah, they want to do direct licensing and buyouts, but my understanding is they want to also do that for people who have already had music on the shows, not just going forward.
That's going to be ugly.
That's going to be ugly. And one person, there's an article in Variety about it, and one person said that they didn't even offer him compensation in exchange for the buyout of rights, which I'm like, what? That's not even a valid contract.
Right, and there's no buyout if you're not buying it
Right,
out.
Exactly.
That's called robbery.
Yeah, it's called like bullying you into like, you either get your music on our show and agree to this, or you don't get your music on our show.
So here's something that wasn't clear to me, because I did read the article in Variety, and I've read 3 or 4 others. And maybe, I haven't looked at anything in about a week, and maybe they've updated it or clarified.
I haven't seen any updates.
So the way I read it, and some people are understanding it, and others are not, just to be clear on that, is that they're still using composers for a lot of their reality shows, which is something that most reality shows don't do anymore. There used to be, I think we have a mutual friend, Adam Zelkind. Do you know Adam? He used to be the composer of 5 reality shows, I think simultaneously.
Okay.
And was making great money, working his butt off. And then none of the reality shows were using composers anymore. They were all using music libraries. So I find it odd, for lack of a better word, that Discovery still has shows where they're using scoring composers that actually scored a picture and not just flying in music from libraries that fits the scenes. So the question that I had and that others have had, does this affect library music that's used in the show, or is it only for stuff that is scored originally to the picture of that show?
I don't know if there's really a good answer for that at this point, because
you think somebody from Discovery would clarify it?
Well, okay, so what I've been hearing from the inner workings, because everybody's all up in arms, not just composers, but publishers and people are up in arms about this too, and they're saying that apparently Discovery is now like, oh, maybe we pushed too hard on this and we should rethink this a little bit. But yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's not a lot of transparency as to what's going on right now. But I would say there is a website. It's called Your Music, Your Future. And you can go to yourmusicyourfuture.com, and it's like a lot of the top composers have been kind of banding together to kind of fight this and fight for composers' rights. But I would also say if you're an ASCAP or BMI member, call them because they stand to lose performance royalties too.
Somebody said to me, this is the beginning of the end for composers. We're going to be bullied into this and blah, 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 blah. And I said, there is a saving grace, maybe more than one or two. But ASCAP and BMI have very deep pockets. And if they're going to lose money, they're going to lobby against this.
Yes. And I mean, I can't speak for them, but I would say yes, they would. And basically, this is part of a trend of, after streaming services and the different things where people do not want to pay for music. And I feel that if everybody stands up and says, no, we will not accept these terms, then they're not going to do it because they're not going to have, if everybody who creates music, all the composers say, no, we're not going to accept this, then they're not going to be able to do it.
I adore you, right? We're friends. I adore you. I think the world of you. But Erin, come on. I would love for that to be true. But
yeah, but if a library is not going to agree to a direct buyout either, then where are they going to get the music?
From a bunch of people who are waiting.
Somebody's going to do it anyway.
There are always people waiting in the wings for an opportunity. And sadly, that's why people can prey on musicians.
Did it.
I know.
People, stand up for your music.
That's right. And no more jaywalking.
Who's jaywalking?
People who break the rules.
Don't break the rules.
I really fear, I don't know, I can't speak for the lawyers at Discovery. I can't speak for the executives at Discovery. But my guess is that somebody somewhere said, somebody will always be available to make more music. Now, would it be the same quality of music? Probably not.
Yeah.
People who aren't as experienced that would jump on that opportunity and take that open door to better their own career, they're not that good now. But maybe a year from now or 2 years from now they would be but is Discovery going to take their product? Are you listening, Discovery? Are you willing to take your product, your shows, the thing that's got your name across the screen, and put crap music on there? I don't think so.
Well, I don't know. They might have to if they keep doing that.
I hope not. I hope
not either. I mean, look, it's, Discovery would want to be paid for their shows if they were distributed elsewhere, not on their own network. And so this is what gets me with everybody is a creator here. They're creating shows, composers are creating music. Respect your fellow creator and pay for their music.
Music has often been and always been the bastard stepchild.
I know.
It's like always
the last budgeted. It's the last everything.
Yeah, it's always the last line item.
Yeah.
I used to run a very large audio post facility in New York City. It was the facility. And it was amazing how many major ad agencies with multi-million-dollar budgets on TV commercials would call up and say, we need to book a 3-hour session. We've got Robert De Niro coming in to read a voiceover on it, and Michael Small's the composer on it. We come there all the time. Can you cut us a break and give us a freebie?
No.
Did Robert De Niro take a freebie?
No. Yeah. Well, it's just like with the films. They spent all the money on blowing stuff up in the movies, and then there's no money left for the music.
That's right. So they should blow up the music and kill two birds with one stone.
There you go.
All right. Well, I hope this gets worked out. And I hope it's not an opening salvo that, where they think, okay, if we come out with some outrageous request, then we can meet in the middle. Because nobody's making a fortune anyway.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't help anybody.
It really doesn't. So Discovery, call me. I'm happy to help you. Just saying. Linda Starr says, Erin, from the 70s through the 90s, I composed music and lyrics and had friends do demos. We all helped each other in those days. Kumbaya. Some friends are dead. Sorry. Some have disappeared. I'm glad I'm not your friend, Linda. Just saying.
I don't think she means they actually disappeared. I think she means she can't find them. And
one has had serious dementia and Alzheimer's for some years now. That's not funny. And he wrote part of the music and played guitar in a demo. I've gotten some forwards in the last few years of belonging to Taxi. That's good news. But if something good happens before it's too late, I'm 74, meaning Linda's 74, I wonder how to handle the legal requirements of placing those songs. Can you help?
Well, firstly, it looks like she's tried to find these people already, but also if they're deceased, or for the person that has dementia, Alzheimer's, if you're able to contact their heirs or who their representative is, like maybe the person with dementia has a spouse, or maybe there's kids that are helping or something.
The kids are always money-grubbing little...
Well, not always, but they're just... Sometimes they just don't understand the music part of it. But I would try and still contact somebody if you can. And then if you can't, and you've really done a good faith search, then I would say hold their share of the money in an escrow account.
Ooh, that's a great idea. That way nobody can accuse you of trying to
steal the money.
Yeah.
I mean, you still might get some heat from it, but at least you've held the money from them, and usually that's what people care about at the end of the day.
That's all they care about.
But do this with a lawyer, like have a lawyer handle stuff, because you want to make sure it's done.
And she does she need a music attorney or an entertainment attorney for this, or could a straight up like business transactional person?
They're not going to understand the music license part of it. Or the copyright part of it. I mean, they can hold the money, but
right.
I mean, but she could hold the money too. But
it'd probably look more kosher if she had a third party, some sort of trustee holding the money.
Yeah, I mean, you could have a trustee holding the money, or you could just have someone like making sure she's doing the right steps and everything.
You should do an article on this.
Okay.
You really should, because we get asked this question pretty frequently.
I've got this question at the rally before.
Yeah. And you know why? I believe that it's because the old, the Woodstock generation is aging out now.
Right. Well, and it also, because copyright is like when you have co-owners, it's joint tenancy, you own an undivided interest, but it's when you grant licenses on behalf of your co-owner, they have to be non-exclusive too. So that's the other thing. Don't go granting some sort of exclusive license, because then you could get in more trouble. So it needs to be non-exclusive.
So it sounds like she's already signed some of this stuff. She's had some forwards.
Right.
But it doesn't say if she signed any deals.
Yeah.
Anyway, we hope that's helpful.
I think she wants to be able to submit these songs, but she's afraid to do it first. I think that's the issue.
And we do get requests in from several publishers, one in particular that we've had a very long and wonderful relationship with, that does a lot of, vintage music.
Yeah.
And they're quite successful with it. And, this is probably going to be an issue more and more frequently as this generation gets older. People pass away or, sadly have dementia or Alzheimer's. You need to do an article. You should become like the leading attorney on this subject.
Okay. Well, I do a lot with legacy catalogs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a nice way of saying old people's music.
Right. Well, but they have a lot of issues a lot of the time. So I clean them up and I get the money flowing again, because usually there's roadblocks as to why the money is not flowing in. And then I assess as to whether I can file copyright termination notices and get rights back for people. And sometimes we sell the catalog, sometimes we find them new homes.
I have a friend who is arguably a top 20 in the world songwriter for a number of hits that have made it to radio and and he and his wife once told me that he's got countless demos and masters of songs that he's written that have never seen the light of day sitting in their attic.
Yeah.
And I fear that when he does, I mean, he's had huge publishing deals and, he's world famous. But I have a feeling that all that stuff in the attic nobody knows about. And there's going to be a what storm when he passes away.
Yeah, there might be.
Anyway, okay, let's do another question. This one's from Richard Emmett. Hello, Richard. He's a great guy, a friend of mine. I love him dearly. Do you know Richard Emmett? used to work. He was a copyist with Frank Zappa.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, you do not get a gig working for Frank Zappa unless you have your act together,
Yeah.
and Richard Emmett clearly does. Anyway, he
Richard.
says, "Hi, Erin. Is there any way to get performance royalties if you've written the theme music for an online podcast? If so, how would that work?" That's a great question.
Yeah, so first find out if the podcast has an ASCAP or BMI license. Because
Are they required to?
they should, yeah. I mean, it's still a streaming media.
So are the
But if-
entities, if you put it on like
Depends on how it's distributed. So
Okay.
so that's one aspect. But if they have a license, then all you need to do is register the work with ASCAP and BMI like you would normally do.
Right.
If they don't, then you can try and negotiate a performance fee directly with them. So I don't know if this deal has been negotiated, if the theme song's already been airing on the podcast. I mean, I don't know the details, but
I'm trying to
But yeah.
what are the names of some of the famous people have podcasts up on SoundCloud.
iTunes is
Yeah.
the biggest. There's
So they would have licenses,
there's Stitcher.
right?
So
I would
there's
think that the
different-
big ones
Yeah,
have
the big ones would have licenses already, but again, if it depends where it's distributed. So if it's maybe like only on a person's website or something, then or they don't have a license for their website, even though it's on iTunes and Stitcher and different places, then you would still maybe want to say like, well, what about the performances that are on your website? But again, if they're embedding it from, like Stitcher, for
Right.
example, that has a license, then that's different. But if they're really just uploading that to their website, then maybe you negotiate an additional fee to compensate for that.
It's the Wild West, isn't it?
It is.
Tony Salazzo says, "Hi, Erin. Regarding mechanical versus cover, if publisher A already has a 50% performance royalty plus 100% of the mechanical, but 0% of cover of an existing song of mine that I have copyright on, can I re-record my own same song for which publisher B gets 50% of the performance share, I'm assuming, performance royalties, 100% mechanical, the new cover version? Also, how does well, let's just answer that and then we'll go
Yeah,
do the
so
second
this
half.
question doesn't totally make sense.
I thought I was just stupid.
Yeah, no, it doesn't really make sense because if publisher A has 100% of mechanicals, why would they not have rights to a cover? Doing a cover is paying mechanical royalties, so I don't see a reason why they would not have mechanical rights on a cover. So I'm not sure what's going on for this situation. Maybe it's just not.
Maybe he's talking about the
explained, right?
sound recording only. I'm trying.
I don't know.
Randy Bachman from
Turner Overdrive.
Yeah. Longtime friend of mine, and for many years was a Taxi member. And he went in. He lost. He was out on tour, and the publishing got sold, and somebody else bought it to all of his hits with the Guess Who and the Bachman Turner Overdrive stuff. So he eventually got it back, but before he did, he cranked out an album of every song of his.
Yeah, but
and redid.
that wouldn't get him around the publishing aspect. It would only give him a new master for income.
Right.
So it gets him around the label, but
right.
it doesn't get him around the publishing.
You're right. And then once he got the publishing back, he was golden.
Yeah.
But that's right. So basically, all he accomplished by doing that was, in the end, the labels got nothing for licensing the master recording.
Well, the labels could still license the original master recordings,
Right.
but not for Randy's new versions,
Right.
new masters.
Okay, and the second half of this question was, and does performing include a sync fee or not, i.e. performing is only when physically played to an audience? Sorry if that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, basically, performance royalties and sync fees are separate. So sync fees is a negotiated upfront fee, part of a license, and Somebody says they like my eyeshadow. Thanks, Linda. I just saw that comment.
I honestly, before I looked at your eyes, I thought her eyes look lovely today, but I didn't want to like go to, you know, Me Too prison for saying that. I think, but your eyes look lovely today.
Thank you. But yeah, so the sync fees are an upfront negotiated fee, and then the performance royalties come on the back end, and they're totally separate. So.
Yeah, I think he's confusing the word performing with performance. That performance means a public performance therein.
Right. Well, if you're performing live,
right,
that
is
a performance, but it's still not a sync.
If it plays on the radio, that's a public performance.
Right.
You get paid for that by ASCAP or BMI,
Right.
assuming you're
But so let's say you're performing live on television, it would be a sync and a performance, but it's still separate. Still separate fees.
You're really good at this.
Oh,
thanks. You should be an attorney.
I should be an attorney. Wow. Good thing I did that.
All right. Next question's from Kumi C. Watanabe. Number 1. I would like to translate into a different language or rewrite lyrics in a different language to an existing published song. So let's say he's going to take She Loves You by the Beatles. Just throwing that out there as an example. I would then like to sing the song and post the video on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, maybe Spotify. Would that be treated as a cover? Do I need to redeposit the lyrics? I don't know what that means exactly. Do I need to credit anyone? So I'm a little confused.
That is a derivative work. It is not a cover. When you make a translation, it is a derivative work, and it requires the permission of the copyright owner, which would be the publisher.
Okay.
And they're going to say, let us see your translation, and then we're going to own the translation. And so probably they're going to own all or the majority of it. And yeah.
What if it's not a... is he saying he's going to... or rewrite the lyrics?
But that's a derivative work too.
Right.
You can't change any lyrics, period.
Okay.
Like, unless it's like from he to she or something like that. Or she to he. Like if a man wrote a song about a woman and then a woman wants to record the song and sing it about a man. So you can do like incidental things like that. But aside from that, no lyric changes. You need publisher permission.
And... so if I translate your song into Japanese and then I do a cover of it, and the only thing I can change are tiny little things like he, she, the original lyrics stand and you're just putting it in a different language. So,
but no, because like, I mean, it would have to be like an actual literal translation, and translations have always been considered derivative works, especially because some things can be, different languages say things differently, and so there can be interpretation issues and stuff. I mean, I remember I was learning to speak Italian, and I found this song that I liked by this Italian artist, and I put it into Google Translate so I would know what it meant, and it was like a very literal translation, and I went, oh, okay, it says blah, blah, blah. And then I told one of my Italian friends that, I really like this song. And apparently the song meant something totally different than the literal translation that Google Translate gave me, because different words have different meanings depending on context.
So
it's something I thought was very innocent was not.
And it's now like, I would love to come over and eat your dog. And you had no idea.
I had no idea. And then I was like, oh,
do you speak
thanks for
Italian?
letting me know. Not so much anymore. I can basically just like order in the restaurant now.
Me too. Pizza for two.
Yeah, for a while I was fairly conversational, but...
yeah, I flunked French 101 4 times in a row.
French is hard.
But I can ask where the bakery is. I can ask where the train station is.
These are important things.
Yes. Okay. Does he need to credit anyone? Well, yeah, you need to credit the original composer or lyricist. Or...
once you get permission, yeah.
Right.
But then they're going to be handling all the crediting. The question is, are they going to be crediting you?
Right. Yeah, what if they don't like your version?
Then they say no. They say you can't do it.
Okay.
It's their right as copyright owner. Same as any of you that own your own copyrights, you get to say how it's used.
He's got a follow-on question saying, I'd like to translate my own songs from English into Italian, Japanese, French, and Spanish, and would like to give some rights to who is collaborating with me respectively in French, Japanese, Spanish, Italian. How do I need to edit the registration with PRS? So clearly he's British.
Yes.
Do you have one registration for 5 languages or 5 different registrations altogether? Boy, he's been doing some deep thinking.
So for anybody that doesn't know, PRS is the British Performing Rights Society, the UK Performing Rights Society. So
which Prince Harry no longer has a piece of.
No, he didn't have a piece of that anyway.
I'm just saying.
But yeah, I mean, so it's basically like in America we have ASCAP and BMI. In England they have PRS. So the way I would do it is I would do each translation as a different work and would be a different registration. That's how I would do it.
Okay. John Griffin wants to know, I own half the publishing for a song that sold several million copies outside of the U.S. That's like saying we're really big in Japan, right? Just kidding. Sorry. I used to get that a lot.
Well, he is big, it's just not in Japan.
Right.
Because this is different.
The Mexican publisher refuses to pay me. He owns the other half. He basically said, come sue me in Mexico. Do you speak Spanish?
I speak some, yeah.
This was in the 90s, and I've pretty much given up getting anything, but is there any recourse left?
You basically have to go sue him in Mexico.
Do you have any friends or relatives in the Sinaloa cartel?
Well, but the other thing is, you know, I'm an American attorney, so I don't know what the Mexican copyright statute of limitations are, but as this happened in the 90s, he might be SOL at this point. I don't know.
What does SOL mean?
I can't say it on this broadcast.
What is the statute of limitations in the United States?
It's usually like 3 years, 2 or 3 years.
Oh, okay. Not
Again,
that long.
I'm not a litigator.
Right.
So.
Thank God I wouldn't have you on the show.
Okay. I make deals.
Somebody once told me the second most cash-rich and powerful lobby in Washington, D.C. is the Trial Lawyers Association.
I wouldn't be surprised. There's a lot of money. I mean, you're going to litigation, you're starting at 5 figures.
Yep.
Yeah. And usually you're finishing at high 6 figures.
Don't I know
it?
it?
So, I'm not telling you anything you don't know.
Even when you win.
Yeah.
And it was a BS lawsuit, it's still going to be high 5 figures. So, yeah, you don't want to get involved in a lawsuit. Dominic Peel wants to know, I think I have a case that a huge band ripped off a melody and lyric that I wrote back in the 90s. At the time, the song was on an album published by a company who have since been amalgamated several times over the years with larger companies and are now untraceable, by me anyway. Any ideas how I can pursue this, or even if it's worth following up?
Well, I don't know if it's worth following up because I don't know whether it's actually an infringement or not, because I get calls all the time that people think something's an infringement and it's not. I
heard my song on the radio today. Yep.
So infringement requires substantial similarity and access, and so usually it's like so-and-so famous person put my song on the radio, and it's like, have they ever heard your song? And it's like, well, no, but, and I'm like, then it's not infringement. Right. But in some cases, they did have access to it. So maybe they worked with the same producer or something like that. So there are situations where there are access. So I don't know the details of this particular situation, so I don't know whether there's an actual infringement or not. You'd also have to find a lawyer to take the case. There's also the statute of limitations issue. So I would say probably the best thing to do would be to have a consultation with a lawyer that specializes in copyrights and music and infringements to see if you have a claim, because then either you can go forward or not.
Here's a great first step. many years ago, probably 15 years ago, I got a phone call from somebody whose band I produced in the late 70s. And we became friends at the time, but didn't really stay in touch. So the guy calls me up somewhere in the mid to late 90s and goes, Michael, I can't believe that you're the guy that thought of Taxi. It's the greatest thing since sliced bread, blah, 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 blah. So being the good friend I am, I gave the dude a free Taxi membership. 6 months later, I answer my phone. He's screaming at me in the phone, "You MFers got my song ripped off." Well,
don't give a free Taxi membership.
Yeah, nobody's ever getting any more free memberships, trust me. But the thing was that he claimed, Faith Hill's husband, Tim McGraw.
Yeah.
Tim McGraw has a hit on the radio right now with the song I Sent Into Taxi. Well, first of all, the first thing we do, we keep very copious records, extremely careful records here, and we had never forwarded his song to anybody related in any way, shape, or form to Tim McGraw. Mm-hmm. So there was no chain there.
Right.
And the second thing I did was, I can't remember if I checked ASCAP, BMI, wherever, I found out that the song that Tim McGraw had the hit with was actually written years before my so-called friend song was. So that's the good good first step is to see whoever you think has your song currently on the radio, find out who the writer is, who the publisher is, and when the date of the copyright was. Mm-hmm. That's step number one.
Yeah.
You could hear the guy going, wah, 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 on the phone, and never heard from him again. I'm surprised he didn't call for a free renewal. Okay, this one's from John Pearson. Yo, JP. Hi, Erin, and thanks in advance. I recently received a contract from Netflix for a vocal song placement. I was offered the option of a buyout of my back-end royalties. I didn't know that could happen.
That's a thing.
Yeah, wow.
With Netflix.
I didn't opt for that and stayed with the conventional style sync fees plus my back-end, which I realize at the moment will be low. Do you see light on the horizon as far as getting higher streaming payouts? Page turn. And do you believe I jeopardized future contracts by opting to not take a buyout?
I think you were smart not to take the buyout. Because when my clients are offered the buyout and when my publisher's clients are offered the buyout, we say no. Because over time, yeah, I mean, the royalties are low starting out, but over time, and the more that you amass, that will all start to add up. So, yeah, this goes back to what I was saying earlier in the show, is like everybody needs to put their foot down and say, we're not letting you buy out the performance royalties. Because the reason why these companies want to do it is so they don't have to pay the ASCAP and BMI licenses anymore.
How much?
They can be very expensive.
What is it like?
It's based on a formula of, how many subscribers they have and, what their reach is. And I mean, for regular network TV, it's, the advertising revenue and all kinds of stuff. So, is
it in the multi-millions?
It can be.
Yeah.
It depends how big it is.
Well, let's say it's ABC.
I don't set the rates, so I can't.
It's impossible to understand how anybody sets the rates. The formula.
Nobody knows how
Albert
they set
Einstein
the rates.
couldn't understand the formula.
Don't even try to understand how they set the rates, but they have a way to do it, and it's based on a variety of factors, and they can get expensive. So I don't know that it's. I would have. Depending on how many composers they have, it might not be that much cheaper, but it's probably cheaper because, the thing is like if you love a certain show, you can just keep streaming it and watching it over and over and over again, and every time it's getting streamed, like that's showing up. So, so we don't take the buyouts. And if you have a good music attorney negotiating the deal, you can get the option taken out. So
I've got the strangest question you've ever had. Seriously? Yeah, swallow that water before I ask this question.
I am not being facetious.
When I ask this, I've actually had this thought.
Okay.
So I wanted to get the camera and lighting better on the show. And
Okay.
somebody said to me, you should check out Chatterbait, which I'd never
Okay.
even heard of such a thing. But
Yeah, I don't know what that is. Yeah.
it is live people, male and female, streaming themselves in a state of undress, doing all kinds of weird stuff on camera. And you get a grid of these people and you go, I like that one, and I like this one. And frankly, I was a little upset that some of these people who they have better lighting and cameras, even though they're using the same camera and the same lights I am, their stream looks better. But I noticed when I was checking them out, and I did it only for professional reasons.
Right.
You know, I actually didn't look at any of the nudity ever. But they have music playing.
Yep.
Many of these people, be they male, female, or couples, or animals, barnyard animals, they have music play in the background, usually on like a Bluetooth speaker or something.
Yeah.
And it could be, it's not music that Cousin Vinny made, you know? It's
Right.
like hit
No,
records.
it's real music.
Right,
That
so-
needs to, that's a sync.
Yeah.
Needs to be paid for.
It's not ephemeral, right? It's
No.
live.
Well, it's live, but is it archived? Can you go back and watch the videos?
You cannot,
It's still a data transmission, though.
I would think.
Yeah.
So there you go.
That's, yeah.
That's a lawsuit, I think. And apparently there are...
I'll tell the NMPA.
Yeah, I think that there are dozens of these
Yeah.
companies
Oh, yeah.
operating with hundreds of channels per company.
Was, I wrote this big article about Twitch because everybody was streaming music. Like all these gamers had music streaming on Twitch, and
Twitch
Twitch
is a
wasn't
live
paying.
broadcast,
Yeah.
mostly gamer broadcast.
Yeah,
right?
and people weren't paying. And so now I think they've worked something out. But at the time, they weren't paying for anything. But there's still a lot of income streams on Twitch that are not being factored into the music. So, yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to go online and do more research. Just say, how stupid of me. I'm sitting there looking at this stuff going, I wonder if they're paying for that music.
That's when you know you're in the music business.
That's right. You guys should be proud of me. I'm doing this research for you, bring you better looking show and get you paid if your music is used on Chatterbait. Okay, Duncan McLaughlin wants to know, regarding copyrights, do the companies offering affidavits of ownership services really carry any legal weight in proof as opposed to registering a real copyright? Ooh, I know the answer to this one, but go ahead.
I'm so glad that this question was asked. The answer is no.
No, give them a
No, they do not carry any legal weight in proof as opposed to registering a real copyright. The only source that a federal court will look to is your official copyright registration from the United States Copyright Office. And so, to my knowledge, none of these companies have any, and these independent companies that are doing this service, they, to my knowledge, don't have any proof of any precedent that their registrations are accepted by any courts. And the other thing is like, people always ask about the poor man's copyright, which is when you mail it to yourself. Now, that postmark is by the United States Post Office, which is a government entity, and a court won't look at that either. They only look at the federal copyright registration certificate, and some people are like, well, it's expensive. It's, like $55, I think it's going up to $60 for the application, and I can do it somewhere else for $3. But when you're in an infringement suit, you're going to be really glad you paid that $60, because you're going to have to do it anyway. Like, let's say you do the $3 one through an independent company. If you end up in an infringement situation, you can't even sue in federal court without a federal copyright registration. So you're still going to have to go and then do a rush application before you file litigation. And then it's going to cost you more because it's a rush application, plus all the litigation that you're in and blah, blah, blah. So just do the federal copyright registration from the beginning and don't spend your money on all these other places.
Now, that said, and we've talked about this before on the show, so I'll make short work of this so we can get on to the other questions. People often ask, do I need to register every instrumental cue that I write? Erin, as a music attorney, would advise you to register everything. I, as a business person, would look at the financial downside and upside. That if a cue, chances are an instrumental cue is probably going to earn you less than $1,000, maybe less than $100 in its lifetime. So do you want to spend $50 or $60 registering that? Because there's a pretty good chance it'll never get used, period. And there's probably not going to be any substantive litigation over an instrumental cue.
Unless that cue gets picked up and used for a larger song. Right. But the Copyright Office is getting a little more strict with their rules about grouping, but there are still situations where you can
collective
group.
Works?
Yeah, you can do like, cues for show X or something like that, usually. So, I mean, check first, because again, they keep changing their rules on what they're going to group and not group. And things that I've grouped, then they're like, well, we can't group these. And I'm like, I just sometimes they're inconsistent. It's like you file one application, you file another, and like one comes back that needs to be fixed and the other one goes through and you're like, what? So check, but there are situations where you can group. So then that will cut down on the fees as well.
Okay. Somebody, Ann House is saying, so what if we're submitting full songs, music and lyrics for taxi listings? Register it
I
or
would.
not?
Yeah, I would register it.
Yeah, full song, yeah. Especially if you're pitching to record label type listings, pitching to Beyonce, whomever. Mm-hmm. A song has a greater chance of ending up somewhere it shouldn't, probably, than a measly instrumental cue. And I don't mean to denigrate the quality or the value of an instrumental cue.
For composers that are composing all day long and they're just churning out cues, it's different than songs in just volume.
Right, and the work that goes into a cue is less than the work that goes into writing a big hit song. And if your copyright on a song is going to be infringed, pray to God that it's somebody big like Beyonce, right? I mean, if I steal your song, you're going to get bupkis because it's not going to be a hit.
Well, right, but it'll be a hit, but then they're also going to have more money to fight your infringement suit, which means you're going to have to spend more money on a lawyer, and hopefully, you're hoping that you win, but if you don't, you're out lots of money. So that's the downside of having somebody huge.
Lawsuits are not fun.
No.
Okay.
Dan
McGowan says, thank you. Hello, Erin. I'm producing a music-themed cable TV show where I'll be using multiple song cues of 5 to 10 seconds each. Do I need to obtain permission from copyright owners for each of the songs to do this? Does a potential broadcast channel already have a license to cover these usages? Thanks. Great question.
Yes, you need permission. And then Dan is also in the chat asking about the copyright law of 1976. Yes, that is still our current copyright law, is the Copyright Act of 1976. So yes, you need permission. Yes, you need to obtain it from the copyright owners, and the broadcast channel will probably have performance licenses, but they don't have authority for syncs. So that's why you have to go because syncs for the original. And then if you're incorporating songs into cues and you're like mixing them with other music, they're not just a cue on their own, then it can be a derivative work. So go get permission.
Bill Milliken wants to know, we do a lot of jingles for broadcast. Many of the companies that we work with ask us to use 7 or 8 seconds of a copyrighted song. Usually a quite popular copyrighted song. Is there a time limitation that a copyrighted song can be aired before crossing the line into infringement?
I'm also glad this question was asked, because this is like the biggest myth that just won't die.
Kill
No, there's no rule. You can't use 1 second. You can't use 3 seconds. You can't use 7 or 8
You
seconds.
can't even use a snare drum
You can't
hit.
use a snare drum hit. You can't use 3 chords. You can't, nothing. You can't use anything from another copyrighted work. You always, always, always need permission. And if anybody tells you differently, you tell them what I just said.
Just like that. Woo.
It's just pervasive. It's
It
all
is.
over the internet. This, like, people have been saying this for years. It's not a thing. It's just not a thing.
Wow. How do you really feel? Okay. Whether
Get permission.
Whether I wants to know. Hi, Erin. Great attending your road rally. See, there you go. Road rally session and panel on music
Thanks for
publishing
coming.
contracts. Can you please provide...
See, people like it. They're like, preach it. Marion says, preach it.
There you go.
See?
Preach it, sister.
That's right.
Can you please provide some clarity about the do's and don'ts of instrumental cue PRO registration?
Yes.
There was conflicting
Well, this
advice.
is PRO registration, not
Right,
copyright.
right.
We talked about the copyright part.
Right, now we're going to, and we don't necessarily agree. We understand each other's positions, but we don't necessarily agree on this. And I'm not an attorney, she is. There was conflicting advice to the rally about registering cues under PRO songwriter and or publishing accounts. You recommended registering with them both, or registering them with
Registering as a songwriter and a publisher.
both. Okay.
Yeah.
All other industry professionals I asked at the rally recommended not registering them at all, since most music libraries register cues and won't be able to do so if they're already registered with a PRO. Thanks. So
Wrong.
He's asking
Whatever
for
these people said is wrong. So here's the thing. There could be 2 different scenarios. If you are not signed to a library and you're currently your own publisher, then you do want to register that work with the PRO, and you want to put it with your writer account and you want to put it with your publisher account so that you're getting both sides of the royalty, the writer share and the publisher share. And if you have already registered that, and with you as the publisher, you've already registered a composition with you as the publisher.
I'm not going anywhere. And
Like,
I'm not going to whack you. I'm getting out my
getting a ruler. Like,
my
what are you
camera
doing?
adjustment tool. There we go.
Okay, so if you've already registered a composition with you as the publisher, and then later you sign that to that composition to a library, the PRO can change it. So what would happen is the library will contact the PRO and say, we are now the publisher of this song, can you please change the registration? And then the PRO will go to you and say, hey, this library says that they're now the publisher and we should change the registration. Is that right? And you'll go, yep, that's right. And they'll go, okay, and they'll change the registration. So whatever that person said about the PRO can't change the registration, that's wrong.
They might not be able to change it fast enough for
Well, yeah, you got to
a
stay
quickie
on
placement.
it. Yeah.
But this is a scenario where that wouldn't work. A
Get
show.
on it.
Well, I don't know.
Besides, the royalties are not paid for months later, so that
Right.
they'll still be able to do it. It's not a problem.
If they're in post tonight on a TV show and they reach out to a library, and they reach out to a library for whatever kind of cue, a drone cue, and the library sends something, they don't have exactly what they need, but the library owner reaches out to one of their favorite composers and says, do you have some drones? Yes, I do. Send them over. They're not registered yet. The library they've already registered. The composer has registered the drone cue. They give it that evening or that afternoon to the library. The library owner gives it to the show. They end up using it in the show, and the cue sheet gets filled out the next day because they're already in post mix. So now there's a problem just because ASCAP or BMI don't move fast enough. They'd have to change it after the cue sheet has been filled out.
But that's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
what happens when a catalog gets sold or something, and a new
Right.
publisher takes it over? You're
That's a
still
great
getting
point.
paid.
Yeah.
So
And frankly, you're going to
it
make
doesn't matter.
$1.27 anyway.
Yeah, so it doesn't, I mean, so they can still change it. That's not an issue. Now, if you're already signed with the library and you're writing or you're composing cues specifically for a particular library that you're already signed with, then no, you don't have to put yourself as the publisher, because really it's the library's job to be registering those cues. So they're going to put themselves as the publisher and you as the songwriter. So that's part of their job, to be doing those registrations.
So that is the thing that travels via word of mouth at the road rally. Somebody who's new walks up to somebody who's experienced and says, do I need to register my cues with ASCAP or BMI prior to submitting to taxi listings and getting forwarded to a library? And the seasoned taxi member who's already got library deals will say, no, the library is going to do it for you anyway, and they think it's a pain in the butt if they have to change the registration on it.
Well,
so that's kind of how it goes, word mouth.
Yeah. I mean, look, if a library says to you that information, or says like, oh, the PRO can't change it or something, don't sign with that library, because they don't know what they're doing. Just call me. I'll fix it.
That's right.
That's what I do.
She will yell at them, and now we have
I
proof.
do. I have my people, and I get on it, and when that catalog changes hands, I make sure that that's updated.
Dan Lieberman says, or asks, what's the best way to protect your original compositions if you don't have lead sheets? Also, let's just stop right there.
Yeah, let's stop right there. Record it, because the Copyright Office will accept an MP3 as a deposit copy.
Could you send a lyric sheet with chords written in?
You could, I suppose, but why not just record it?
Yeah.
You could send both. I've had people send an MP3 with a lyric sheet.
Also, if you've created a song but it hasn't been copywritten or published, would you advise against posting a video on YouTube, for instance?
I would, because if you're posting on YouTube, it's public, and so it's vulnerable to infringement. So just register for copyright and post it after it's registered, or post it after you file the application. So
Don Ratto, I hope I'm not butchering your name. You'll probably cover it anyway, but it would be great to have a bit of simple information and advice regarding joining a publishing company. It's not something that ever occurred to me until I joined Taxi. Wow. That's a book's worth of advice.
yeah, can I... More on that later. I just want to point out that Rick Paul is saying in the chat that the lyric sheet with the chords would not document the melody.
Oh, good point.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Rick Paul, you win
That's
a prize.
why MP3, people, if you don't have a lead sheet.
And I haven't registered a copyright ever. Do they now have a way to affix an MP3 to the copyright reg form online?
Yeah, so they don't even want paper applications anymore. So you file it online, and then when you are in the checkout, so to speak, you pay, and then it takes you back to another screen, and then there's a file upload thing, and you upload your MP3.
I have been to the
Library of Congress?
down in room B14.
Yeah.
Have you been down there?
I have not been down there,
my
but
God.
yeah, I've heard stories.
It's like, first of all, it's in the basement, and I'm sure that and there are these hallways that literally go for like a mile underground, and you see golf carts driving, and they disappear over the horizon. It was the weirdest thing. I walked out of B14, and I see a guy go whizzing by in a golf cart, and sure enough, he literally disappeared. Nobody told me about this.
Yeah.
The guy disappeared over the horizon. So then I had to go walk it to see how long it was. It was like a mile long.
Wow.
So I think that they built those as bomb shelters back in the day, kind of dual purpose hallways. But while I was in room B14, which is the room where the copyright stuff actually happens, it's the nerve center of copyright. I saw those metal push carts that that they had like the 16 millimeter projector on when you were in grade school, if you're old. And on those, they had scrolls, parchment scrolls
Yeah.
I kid you not.
Yeah.
When you see parchment scrolls in the Copyright Office, to me that means only one thing, which is, man, are they slow.
Yeah.
Which they are kind of famous for. But we love you.
They're doing better. They're modernizing. They're getting more stuff online. They're really working on it. So
I got in trouble. You
did?
Oh, I got spanked
Why does this not surprise me?
I got spanked by the U.S. government. Here's why. We were buying a mailing list. It's free information to see that get the name of everybody who copyrighted a song last month. It's extremely tedious because the computers were so unbelievably antiquated in room B14 at the Copyright Office that you couldn't do, like, say, show me everybody who copyrighted a song in the month of July 2019. You had to do, show me everybody, with whose last name begins with A that registered a song on July 1st of 2019. And then you could hit the return button and go make a sandwich, go to the restroom, go take that mile-long walk, get a ride back on the golf cart, and hope you don't disappear over the horizon. And then you walk in, and the thing is still churning, and then boom, there it is.
Yeah.
So I sent them a letter saying I would happily buy you some new computers. The government doesn't take kindly to people buying stuff and giving it to them.
Oh.
Yeah, I got in real trouble for that.
Wow.
Yeah, I had to contact an attorney. The government thought that I was trying to bribe government officials. Like, I'm trying to buy you a friggin' computer so I don't have to wait 6 weeks to get this stuff back.
Michael.
I was just trying to be a nice guy.
I know.
Okay.
But as far as the joining there's so much information about joining a publishing company that we could discuss. So,
what are some of your favorite books that he might read?
Well, there's 2 books that are out there right now, but they're more complicated. They're not
just publishing.
Well, no, they are. There are some that are just publishing, but it's not basic, basic publishing. It's not like Publishing 101. So.
Doesn't somebody have a Publishing 101 book?
I don't think so.
Really? Wow. Okay. I'm trying to come up with some witty, summary you're thinking about. The bottom line is publishers, back in the old days of record companies and songwriters in the Brill building, songwriters like that, they would sign with a publisher. A publisher would advance them a yearly advance against future royalties. So let's just make the numbers even to make sense out of it. Say it was $100,000. You, as the songwriter, were then obligated to turn in 12 songs a year. If you co-wrote, then you were obligated to turn in 24 songs a year because your interest was diminished by 50%. And they had to meet the quality bar, and be pitchable before the company would credit that for you.
And that's still,
a thing.
Structure is still standard in publishing deals. It's just they're not just like staff writers in the Brill building, but that carried over to modern contracts.
It does, which have become more complicated because now a song has 6 authors that.
Yeah.
But that's
or
a whole
14, but that's a different story.
But know that model of publishing is somewhat different, maybe even dramatically different from music libraries, which publish music for film and TV. Because somewhere along the line, you're going to ask somebody about publishing, or you're going to take a course in college, or read a book, or somebody online is going to say, never give away your publishing. And Erin would tell you that as an attorney, you should never just give away your publishing. But there's a caveat, which is for music library stuff, especially and specifically for instrumental cues, most libraries today do not pay you for the publisher's share, which is essentially half of the publishing dollar. They used to pay you for that. Libraries don't, because these are tiny little things that move around quickly, and it's mostly about the back end. Songs are treated differently.
Are you saying they don't pay you in advance, or are you saying that?
Yeah.
Or they don't? Or you're just saying it's a 50-50 split?
Well, they don't pay you in advance.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Correct.
And most of the time you don't get a sync fee for the placement of an instrumental cue in a reality show.
Yeah.
You might, or you probably will, in a network television show or a little bigger production. But reality shows, and it's all started with MTV in the 90s, I think.
Yeah, pretty like MTV just stopped paying people for syncs because they could.
And now people like beg to get on MTV because the shows are repeated so often, and then all over the world.
And that was their argument, is that, well, you'll make it on the back end. But most people, it doesn't happen. So
it's as Jim Long, who is arguably the Clive Davis of the production music library business, once said to me, it's a penny business. You just got to make a lot of pennies.
Yeah.
And people do. I mean, we're having dinner tonight with somebody who makes a multi-six-figure income from largely instrumental cues. And he's probably got 2,000 or 3,000 cues in various libraries. Anyway, it can be done.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen overnight. It's not like you create 20 cues and you end up in a TV show and they send you a check for $50,000.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. You get $1.27 or 53 cents or $9.12. All these weird little numbers. And if you do it long enough and do it in a
volume,
systematically,
it adds up.
Yeah, to a six-figure income, you too can have a multi-six-figure income. Okay. Let's talk. For those of us who live and work in the state of California, and we won't go to. I won't ask you to go very in depth on this because it's still the layers of the onion.
It's a mess, and nobody really knows what's happening.
Right.
So
this is called AB5, which is Assembly Bill 5 for the state of California, brought to us by our wonderful legislators and governor. And what they're trying to dramatically narrow the scope of what is considered an independent contractor. So this is affecting musicians. I read an article the other day that made a case, and we don't know. I'm going to give you a caveat right up front.
Yeah.
I'm repeating information I saw on the internet. Okay, so it may or may not be accurate.
Because everything on the internet is
true.
Right?
The bill just kicked in like 12 days ago, literally 12 days ago.
Yeah.
And frankly, I read the bill top to bottom like 3 times. It wasn't drafted all that well. And there are going to be a lot of lawsuits, and my guess is that a year or two from now they will back off and they will moderate or modify this bill somewhat.
They're already trying to get it. Groups are already trying to try and appeal and get modifications.
Well, isn't it funny that it's if you write computer code and you're an independent contractor for Google, then you're okay. You can be an independent contractor. It's now, there's a thing called the ABC test, and I can't tell you off the top of my head what the A, B, and C are, but in a second I will ask you, but they did what's called a carve out or a cutout for computer coders and for graphic artists.
And repossession people.
Guys who repo your friggin' car are independent contractors. Yeah. However, taxi screeners who listen to your music, who have been independent contractors for 27 years. We've been audited by the IRS, and we passed. They said, why? Look at that. Your people actually are independent contractors. Then we got audited by the state of California, which is much more stringent than the IRS, and they went, look at that. These people are independent contractors. And now they're not. So we have just made our screeners are now employees, part-time employees of taxis. Some of the screeners could be out on the road with a famous act, playing drums at the famous act, and they come home for Christmas break. They're off the road, and they come in and they screen 3 hours on Tuesday morning, an hour and a half to 4 hours on Thursday afternoon, and then they go back out on the road again for 10 and a half months, and we don't see them. We have to make them an employee. It's frickin' crazy. Anyway, take it away, Erin.
Okay, so basically, the test is if the person that is hired, the employee, we'll call them, has to be free from the control or direction of the hiring person in the performance of the work. So both in contract, in writing, and in fact, which is in reality. So you're going to need a lot of agreements here, people. Then that's A. B is the person performing the work is outside the course of the hiring entity's business. So an example of that would be a restaurant that's hiring a band to play is not the employer of the band, because the restaurant is in the business of feeding people and the band is in the business of making music to entertain people.
What about if the band is hired by Hotel Cafe?
That's different.
Okay.
That's a music venue.
Okay.
So, well, the other example that's been kind of floating around too is that if a restaurant hires one person, like let's say I have a restaurant and I say like, Michael, why don't you come play some music on Saturday night at the restaurant?
Do you want people eating in your restaurant?
I don't know. This is a hypothetical scenario, okay?
Very much so.
And then you're like, okay, let me call like this person to play bass and this person to play drums and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And you're hiring them. You guys all play music, so you become their employer. And it's one gig. So if a musician is hiring another musician to play a gig, you're an employer. If a musician is hiring a producer for your album, you're an employer. If you're a composer or a songwriter and you're hiring somebody to sing or play on your demo, you're an employer.
Okay, what if you hire me to produce your record and I hire Ariana to program the synthesizers? Who's the employer? Probably me, the producer.
I would say you're the employer of her and I'm the employer of you. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is why nobody knows what's happening with this bill. So, and the exceptions that are in the bill don't have anything to do with the music business. And some people were saying like, oh, everybody should just create corporations because then it would be business to business.
We have screeners that are
And the tax
LLCs.
professionals are saying no because it still goes back to this ABC test. I didn't say C, sorry. C is the person that is customarily engaged in independent business of the same work that's performed. So again, that's like one musician hiring another musician or hiring a producer. Everybody's in the music business, or the business of making music or performing music. Whereas like if you hire a bookkeeper, like you're a musician and you hire a bookkeeper, like the bookkeeper is not performing the same sort of business that you are, and then if the bookkeeper is also doing bookkeeping for other people, then that person's going to be looked on more favorably as an independent contractor.
What about when you hire an undocumented alien to mow your lawn?
Well, that's been for like a long time that people say you have to put them on a payroll and stuff. So
we're all going to prison.
This is probably, you know, everybody listening or watching can see like it's so there's so many unknowns. It's so mushy. We don't know what's going to happen. Because like major record labels, every artist on their label is now going to be an employee, which historically they're not. They're independent contractors. So this. We don't know what's going to happen.
I contend that they're licensors.
But they're transferring ownership, so they're not licensors.
Are they?
Yes.
Oh, they are. That's
because
right.
in record deals, unless you have a true situation where the artist retains ownership of the masters and the label is licensing those masters.
Which if you were the Rolling Stones, you might
exactly
do
like
that.
Taylor Swift is in that situation right now with Universal, but otherwise the record label owns the masters, and the artist is exclusive to that label, and whatever they record during the term of that agreement belongs to the label.
Now they foisted this law upon us. They made a case for
like Uber and
Uber and Lyft. Everybody's an independent contractor, and they're actually fighting it in the courts. I personally don't think they have a great case, but I think the government of California, the state of California, looked at those companies and said, wow, they've got, tens of thousands of drivers, so there's a tax base for us. But unfortunately, it was so like ill-conceived and not really fully thought out. And
Yeah.
there's so many carve-outs that should exist that don't, that it's a mess.
Yeah.
It is a mess. So,
It's a mess.
But Taxi, being the good guys that we are, we hired a tax attorney who is a specialist in AB5.
Good.
We spoke to our accountant about it at length. And now all of our guys are becoming employees, even if we only see them 3 days a year.
Good
Because
for you.
they have rights. They now
Right.
get sick pay, or they accrue sick pay hours by screening.
Whatever works.
Yep. And the sad part is, virtually 100% of them have other forms of revenue. They may teach drums, they play drums on the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just using the drummer here because I'd like to use drummers. But they could have all these different things that they do, and they're going to have to be an employee of the band they play drums with, the music store where they teach drums. They're an employee now.
It's affecting everything.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so AB5, not good. What are some typical? This is an interesting question. Most bands don't even think about this, but they should, and I'm sure that you
I
would.
talk about this in my taxi class.
There you go. So, what are some typical elements of a good, solid internal band contract?
All right. Well, so first, you need to know, are you a partnership, or are you forming an LLC or a corporation? And there's different reasons for all of those things, but at least in California, if you have not formed an LLC or a corporation and you're just getting together with people and doing a band, you are by default a general partnership, which means you share profits equally, but you also share liabilities equally. So if somebody puts your band in some big debt or does something bad, you're all liable. So,
I've never seen these guys before in my life.
yeah. So that could be a problem. But some issues to think about are who can act and sign contracts on behalf of the band, who owns the intellectual property, how are the royalties shared, and that can be different based on the different royalty streams that are available, who owns the band equipment, who owns the band name, who can use the band name if the band breaks up, what happens if a member leaves, what happens if a new member is being added, and lots more.
It used to be like, dude, show up at my
Right.
house in the basement
It's not
tonight.
like
We'll
that
smoke
anymore.
a little weed and make some music. Not like
No,
that.
it's not like that.
They've taken all the fun.
But these are important because the disputes happen all the time, and the time to do a band agreement is when you are starting the band, because if you're waiting until you're already fighting with each other, it's way too late. So
Excuse me. I was gurgling. I'm going to cherry pick some here.
okay.
I get asked this one all the time.
Okay.
What do production music libraries do to get half of the money? People get really offended when they see that it's a 50-50 deal, meaning most of the time, not 100%. Very often, the production music library gets 100% of the publisher's share, and the writer keeps 100% of the writer's share. So it's essentially, it's a 50-50 deal. And people say, but what do the libraries do that they should get half the money? So can you elaborate on that, please?
I can.
Please do.
They register, well, they're supposed to be registering works for copyright and for royalty collection with your PROs. They're supposed to pitch music to the shows. They put together compilations of music for projects. They negotiate the license fees and the terms with the licensees who are using the music, and they collect the royalties and prepare and generate all the statements and payments for the writers.
And they may actually prepare the music as well. Some
They may.
libraries will, master every single cut before it goes out.
Yeah,
They
every
may-
library is different.
Yeah,
so,
they may edit the stuff. They work for the money.
Yeah.
Um,
And if they're not doing all those things, then potentially think about a different library.
There you go. By the way, I always tell people, don't fall in love with a library because they love you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of how to not make this.
It is good if they love you. I mean, you definitely
It
want them
is.
to love you versus not love you.
I remember my father once said to me, and pardon me for this being a little crass, but my dad can be a little crass. He once said to me, "Don't marry the first girl that will sleep with you." When I was like going off to college.
Well, that is good advice. You know?
Yes. And the same thing is true of libraries. I hear people, I call it the my publisher syndrome. People, it makes musicians, songwriters, composers feel really good to be able to say, I've got a publisher. That is certainly an accomplishment. You know, when you've been independent, unknown, and your family members are laughing at you behind your back at Thanksgiving dinner. It's like he's still doing the music thing. And now you've got a publisher, and you want to say, well, my publisher.
Yeah.
But don't put all of your eggs in that one publisher's basket. You should spread them around and frankly, use that first publisher as proof of concept to the other companies that you are good enough.
I'm going to say library instead of publisher
Libraries.
in your example, because usually if you're signing an actual publishing deal, you're going to be exclusive. So.
Right, and you can't go, everything you write would go into like Warner Chappell or Sony or one of the big publishing catalogs. So music libraries, production music libraries are television-specific publishers, and they operate much differently than traditional publishers do. And you can have different music. If you sign a song or an instrumental track exclusively to Erin's library, you can't take that same thing and put it in my library.
That's right.
Then
I'll be mad.
Right, and she'll sue me. But if it's a non-exclusive deal, you can then take that and put it into several libraries. So there, for the gentleman who wanted to know more about publishing, that's everything you need to know right there.
And that goes back to what we've talked about like every year since I've been on the Road Rally, is the, like, if you're checking the box on TuneCore or CD Baby or whatever, that's exclusive and you can't go signing it with other libraries. So you've got to, and people get in trouble over this stuff. I'm starting to see it more and more.
This is the single biggest problem, I believe, other than AB5. Single biggest problem in the industry right now. And again, I've had friends at CD Baby for years. They're not trying to screw anybody.
No.
I'm sure TuneCore's not trying to screw anybody. But
no, they're just providing a service. But
people get horny for that service. It's like, wow, I checked this box and you're going to publish my stuff and get it up.
But the way that it's like, do you want us to collect your publishing royalties? Check here. And nobody's reading the fine print.
Right. But does anybody read the fine print when you click, I accept these terms and conditions on the Apple software or anything?
No, people don't read those either. But
do you? Every one of them?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
I need to know what I'm signing up for. But I mean, in a situation with publishing, it's you need to. Or you need to consult with someone that did read it for you.
So what happens is you check the box and you go, I'd love for you to collect my money. Well, now you've signed, in most cases, I think there are one or two that might be non-exclusive, but in most cases you've signed an exclusive publishing agreement. And then you take that piece of music where you checked that box 4 years ago and totally forgot that you checked the box. And you've checked the box on 127 pieces of music you have with them. Or that album that you put out with them. And lo and behold, we put that piece of music on an episode of Taxi TV. And now I get a notice from YouTube, sometimes while the show is still airing, saying you can't monetize the show because you have music that has a publisher. And I look, and who's the publisher? Why, it's TuneCore or it's CD Baby. Or even worse, you submit that piece of music to Taxi for a listing. We forward it to an exclusive publisher, even a non-exclusive publisher. We forward it to them, and they ask you, do you have any other publishing deals? Why, no, I don't, because you forgot that you checked the box. And so now you've committed fraud. Maybe not knowingly, but...
Well, it's not. You've breached your contract.
Okay, it wasn't by intent, so there's no fraud.
But you've breached your contract. And I've had this happen where people, they sign with one of those, they don't realize, they sign with another company, now they're in breach of 2 contracts because they're in breach of the first one, and then they're in breach of the second one because the second one is going to say the songs that you're giving us are not, part of any other deals, or they're not encumbered by anything else.
That's the
so
word.
now you've breached both. And I'm seeing it happen a lot more now.
Wow.
Yeah.
There are millions of songs out there that are published and people don't even know. Mm-hmm. There's another entity, Source Audio. Do you know much about Source Audio?
I know that it's people use it for pitching and having the library of their
it's basically
songs and
a
stuff.
way to catalog your stuff, and it's kind of like SoundCloud, if you will. Little more developed, and it serves the music library industry well, and they're a fine company. I don't think they're doing anything untoward, but the person you and I are having dinner with this evening, who happens to be sitting in the room now, recently I got a notice from YouTube that one of the pieces of music that he played on an episode of Taxi TV several years ago was encumbered with Source Audio. So they must have an admin thing or something, I'm guessing. And so he checked the box on admin my stuff, and my show wasn't monetized. So guess who's buying dinner tonight? Anyway, it's one of those things that all intents were good. Nothing was nefarious.
Right. I mean, people aren't trying to just be like, oh,
Right.
I don't care that I already signed that other contract or check that box. But it's just, you have to keep track of what's happening and who has what. And especially when you're in a situation where you've got hundreds and thousands of cues and assets now.
Tons.
So
An unimaginable number. Okay, one more question, because we're literally at the end of the hour already, if you can believe that. More and more, I think I wrote this one, as more and more people cut the cord and quit paying for network and cable TV, won't my licensing income drop precipitously when most of it comes from streaming channels like Netflix, Hulu, etc.? They pay really low fees. So that's the big question. I get this one all the time. People say to me, I'm getting more and more stuff on Netflix or Hulu or wherever, any of the streaming things. Where do you see the future of all this going? Again, do we rely on ASCAP and BMI to lobby on behalf of all songwriters? I've heard people talking about, we're going to form a union. Well, there already is a union.
yeah.
And we're going to protest against getting paid like crap. What's your 10,000-foot view of this whole mess?
I mean, I've seen pretty decent sync fees on these services, but yeah, I mean, for cues or composing
or the performance.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is like we said earlier in the show, when people are trying to buy out your performance rights, you don't let them, because then the more streams that you have and everything, like all those pennies will keep adding up. Like you said, the more shows you have, the more cues you have, the more streams you have.
But the rate they're paying, excuse me, the rates that they pay for performance are a tiny little fraction of what you would get on.
Well, I know, but it's the same for streaming music. I mean, it's all across the board. So yeah,
all right.
I mean,
so where's that all going? Can you fix it?
Can I fix it? I wish I could fix it. I try and fix it. I mean, I think part of it's lobbying. I think part of it is demanding a fair fee. I think, that Your Music, Your Future website that we talked about earlier, that I'm not affiliated with, but it looks good. And there's some like top composers on there that are kind of spearheading it. And, it's just an industry-wide struggle. I mean, everybody is fighting to get fair royalty rates. So, I mean, I think we'll be okay. But
I hope so.
What is the specific answer? I don't think anybody really knows that right now.
You know the voiceover guy who famously says, "In a world."
Don LaFontaine. Yes.
There was a guy at an ad agency in New York. He was a producer at one of the big ad agencies in New York, and the actors went on strike. And one of the producers at the ad agency could do a perfect Don LaFontaine.
Yeah.
And this producer ended up walking away from his job at the ad agency and is now a 7-figure voiceover guy because he could do "In a World."
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what happens when you go on strike.
Yeah.
There's a scab you can't put a Band-Aid on. Okay, so as promised at the top of the show,
Yes.
Erin has a catalog of commonly requested templates for different things that you guys as musicians need all the time. Simple publishing agreements, management agreements, band contracts, etc., etc., etc. So if you guys will go into the comments section underneath this video, not even just after the live show, but do it if you're watching the archive a week from now or a year from now, go in there and comment about the types of templates that would be most beneficial to you, and we will reciprocate by giving you links to those templates, and then they can purchase them from you for much less than they would pay to hire you at your hourly rate to do custom work for them.
Right.
Yay.
So are we saying the website now, or they have to put the comments?
They have to put the comments in, otherwise
Put
they'd
the
have
comments.
Yeah, we will plug it, and we will give the generic website.
Yeah.
And is it on your regular website, your lawyer website?
No, it's a separate website.
Okay, so let's go ahead and give that one out.
Which one? My lawyer website?
Yes.
Okay, so my lawyer website for my practice is themusicindustrylawyer.com.
One more time.
Oh, themusicindustrylawyer.com.
All right, yeah. You always have to repeat things a bunch
Okay.
of times. You know,
Well, I figured somebody would put it in the chat or something like that. So,
It's in the description.
oh, it's in the description. See?
there you go.
I know.
All right. So with that, Erin, I want to thank you. You're always
Thank you.
a great guest to have. You're
Thank you.
very, very knowledgeable, a delightful person to have on the show. You make law palatable.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Happy to make it palatable.
Thank you. And don't forget, oh no, I've lost my little signs.
Oh, no, we need the signs.
Do that. That little bell in the upper right-hand corner, click
What
that
is
sucker.
that?
That means that you get alerts.
Oh, okay.
And subscribe.
Subscribe.
Gotta subscribe, right? I mean, look, you're watching a show right now. Do you want to see more great stuff like this? Click that red button in the lower
Right.
right-hand corner. It doesn't cost you anything. Subscribe.
You can see me on Taxi TV more.
That's right. Absolutely. And you've been a guest now like 4 times, I think.
Something, yeah.
And the Road Rally, don't
Always
forget.
good.
November
Yeah.
5th through the 8th.
We'll
in
be there.
2020. With that, we bid you a fond farewell till next week, when we will come forth with another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. Woohoo! In a world